I'm Amber Bell, and this is Real Agriculture. I'm here today at Crossroads Conference and speaking with Travis Asmundson of FCC. So welcome, Travis. It's great to see you.
Great to see you as well. Thanks for having me.
So you just did a presentation on cybersecurity, which is something that isn't really talked a lot about in agriculture. So can you just kind of go into a little bit of your role at FCC and why cybersecurity is important?
Yeah, for sure. Well, my role at FCC is to lead the technology team, actually, and for me the importance is we're trying to find efficiencies and experiences that we can create through technology, but at the same time keep our systems safe, our customers' data safe and secure. So it's always this balance of making sure we keep things safe and secure, but also provide great value and efficiencies at doing so.
Right, and your presentation was geared towards both the organization side and a producer side. So what are some really basic things, because that was something you mentioned, what are some really basic things that producers can do on the ground to kind of keep themselves safe, and how much risk is actually out there?
Yeah, so there's definitely risks that we need to be aware of, but there's also a lot of steps that we can take to protect ourselves, some very basic things that typically don't cost much, if anything, and it's good habits around how we do everything from passwords to how we manage the software that we use, and there's lots of tips and tricks that we can get from some great public sources like the Government of Canada has a cyber-friendly government.gc.ca, and there's great references there with great tips and tricks that everybody can follow, and it doesn't cost a ton of money. It's good habits.
You kind of went into passwords, so let's speak a little bit about that, because I think that that's a confusion. I feel that there's this, you know, it's all or nothing. You need to do every single password has to be different, or, you know, you're just doing it all the same. Like, yep. Too many people do probably. So what exactly would you normally recommend to people for that?
Yeah, passwords is an interesting topic for sure, because not reusing them is definitely the first best practice, but it's hard for some people to kind of get their mind around that. So there's at least using different passwords in different situations like personal and business, but highly recommend things like complicated passwords can become passphrases, so they're more easy to remember, but they're also longer, so harder to be compromised. I think the biggest thing about passwords is anywhere possible, activate multi-factor authentication. So that's that two-step process where you put in a password, but you still have to verify a code that comes to another piece of equipment like your phone. And that actually helps reduce your risk a lot. And lastly, the ultimate way to provide that security is through a password manager. And getting something that you would get a light monthly subscription to is typically going to be where you put all your passwords, they're all different, and then that way you keep them safe and secure and put your confidence in that. So there's different options there, and some are simple and some are a little bit more complicated depending on how safe and secure you feel you need to be.
And when it comes to password managers, because I know even myself, and I'm fairly tech savvy, I was a little bit nervous about getting into the password manager idea, right? So what happens if you forget that password to the password manager, or, you know, how complicated is that for producers to start using?
I'm not gonna lie, there is a little bit of a step to get through it and get going in there, and if there's one password you don't want to forget, it is that one, because there's still ways to unlock it, but it's going to be a multi-step process, and you want it to be, because you don't want anybody to be able to get at that, because it's going to have your info. But it's recoverable, but it's going to be a process you'd have to go through and answer a whole bunch of questions that you would have set up in most cases. But I would still say it's also worthwhile, especially as you get more and more systems and whatnot in your operation. You want to keep those passwords. They're still your single point of entry into systems. So I still recommend it as a practice. It's worth the time, worth the investment, and there's good solutions out there.
Right. And so a lot of farmers are now using Starlink. I know that that's becoming a lot more common in the rural areas, and it's really widened the access to internet. With that, though, what are the security risks with Starlink?
Yeah, I mean, Starlink is a lot like any internet provider. I think that there's still ways that you want to protect yourself with your router and your Wi-Fi and activating some of the controls that they have. But as far as it goes, I have it myself. So I think I have confidence in it and trust in it. And no matter what, there's still steps that you want to take to protect yourself, like turn on your firewall and turn on your authentication and make sure that you've got those basic features activated. And you can also add an additional router if you want to have additional security for people being able to gain access to it. But as far as an internet provider goes, I'm a big believer in Starlink. I think it's been fantastic to get rural locations like cottages as well. I have lots of friends myself who have one at a cottage, so for our customers, but also for personal use too. I'm a user myself.
It's crazy to think that we're in a day and age where you could actually have it going on your truck while you're driving.
Yeah. Yeah, they keep innovating. Like they've got ones that are more and more mobile for like RV camping, but also for, I would think, on your equipment. I haven't seen it, but I'm sure. And then also you can have it in a stationary location. So they keep innovating for sure.
Right, and then last question here for you. So there was a question about tractors, and as we know, there is a lot more technology in our tractors, in our equipment right now, our combines. What is the risk of that, of those being hacked?
Yeah, so I think the rule of thumb is that anything that connects to the internet or that you can connect to, there's some level of risk. So then what you want to do is, how can I mitigate that and how can I work with it? The first thing I would say is whoever you're working with to provide that interaction with, you'd want to understand, okay, how can I keep this secure? What are they doing? And then what are they expecting you to do? So back to passwords, could be authentication on the Wi-Fi that they're using to connect into that, or if it's through a data network, what are the things they're doing? What are the things they're expecting you? Those are conversations to have. And I think once you have them, then make sure everybody on your team, your farm, your operation is aware of the practices that you want to put in place. And they're typically not too complicated or complex. They're pretty straightforward, and it just takes that consistency to be able to do it on a recurring basis. That's terrific, and a lot of really useful tips. I want to thank you so much for joining us on Real Agriculture. And that was Travis Asmundson. Thank you.